Erev Tov. We thought that as we prepare for the high holidays and the service of Selichot, that it would be a good idea for us just to sit together and talk about which prayers speak to us on a more personal level. So I thought I'd start and talk about Avinu Malkeinu. Avinu Malkeinu, as you know, has its origin in a drought. And Rabbi Elazar, he offered 24 prayers that weren't heard. And Rabbi Akiva stands up and he begins Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. And we take this prayer and we've transformed it, because when Rabbi Akiva offered his prayer, it began to rain. And I think about that because there's all kinds of droughts. There's all kinds of challenges in the world, not just physically, but spiritually. And the response to a drought that we hope for is that there will be replenishment. So I come to the holidays and I think about, how am I going to replenish my own soul? What do I need to do to be able to appear before God? And that formulation of Avinu Malkeinu really speaks to me. Because while we celebrate God as King on Rosh Hashanah and we have a coronation ceremony, I don't really relate well to the idea of a king. I don't really understand it the way that perhaps my great-grandparents understood that kind of role of a leader who has life and death in his hands. But what I do know is that I need a way to get to God. So to use the idea of Avinu as a parent who will hear me even when others might not, who will be more understanding when others might not, offers me the opportunity to be in relationship with God in a way that I couldn't be, I don't think, if I was just approaching God as a monarch, as a all-powerful king. I need to have that space as parent, as the one who loves me enough to hear me. And so Avinu Malkeinu really speaks to me on that level.
For me, it's not just one prayer, but I think there's a set of prayers that express God's engagement in my life. And I think about Hanashama Lach, which is part of the Selichot service that we're going to have tonight, but also part of our prayers on the rest of the Yamim Noraim, or Ki Hinei HaChomer, the prayer that says that we're like clay in God's hands, like clay in the hands of a potter, that we have on Yom Kippur. What that says to me when we say Hanashama Lach, the soul is yours, Guf Pe'olach, that the body is what you've made, I feel embraced by that in that moment. I feel a sense of caring and comfort, and the sense that in a moment when I'm thinking about things in my life that are difficult for me, or things in my life that I might wish I could do differently in the future, that there's someone there to create a safe space for me and to create the possibility of change, and to give me a sense that I'm not alone in this difficult work.
Yeah, well, I think building off that, one of the things that I know I think about when thinking about this past year and where we're going in the coming year is what's been going on in our world and how does that affect me personally. And so this past year has not been an easy year in our world, whether it's in Ukraine and with Russia, or if it's with ISIS in parts of the Middle East, or if it's been a lot of the scares with Israel and Gaza from this past summer, or things going on in this country, that there have been a lot of terrifying things. And part of the Selichot service that we're doing tonight, actually the main piyut is B'motzei Menucha, that we start doing these prayers to God. We kick off the high holiday season even before Rosh Hashanah on this Saturday night. And there's one part of this poem, B'motzei Menucha, that says, Hat Oznecha, God, bring your ear down to hear our prayer. That at a time when it feels like we're in a totally chaotic world and we're worried about how things this past year might spill over into this coming year, we actually, in some ways, almost even challenge God and say, God, we want to know that you are going to hear our prayer during this high holiday season to bring a year that is better than the one that has happened this past year, a world that is more improved.
And I think that this idea of empowerment, that we have the power to actually call God into the room, is such a unique concept and so important, I think, just for me, is to know that when I cry out to God in a meaningful way, in a thoughtful way, in an honest way, that God will be there. And that as a congregation, when I hear the community singing, right, Avinu Malkeinu, it's one of the most powerful moments in the service, because as a community, we're gathering and we're doing that. And I think the Selichot service is such a beautiful entry into the holidays. You start to hear the Nusach, and suddenly I'm transformed. As a child, I'm remembering these tunes that are sort of part of me, and I'm opening up these channels in a way that I think is unique to the high holiday period.
Well, there's also a change in us in the late night time.
Yeah.
When we think about, I think sometimes about the mystical circle of the Zohar and the way in which they would come together to study at night, and what's the different emotional and spiritual modes that we have access to at that time of night. Very different than Kol Nidre, which comes at sunset, or the Rosh Hashanah morning service, which is in the morning, or Tashlich in the afternoon. This is one of the rare opportunities that we have for a late night service. We don't generally hold anything that starts so late at night as Selichot. And I find that I'm in a different place then. I'm thinking about different things. I'm aware there's a stillness in the night, and there's a quiet and a calm in me that in the midst of the day, or as the day is turning to night, as it does on Friday nights when we have our Friday night service, it's a different kind of an emotional experience. There's so much power for me in this late night experience, and what's the atmosphere in the room and the emotional experience for me and for the people that I sense around me.
And that really comes to mind is the word that follows Avinu Malkeinu. Avinu Malkeinu Chanenu. That we ask God to be merciful. But it's also the same word, it's the root word for the name of Chana, the character in the Bible, who's a person of chen, who has these beautiful qualities, but a person who also evokes a sense of mercy within God. And my sense is that when we read the story of Hannah and her prayer, that our rabbis remind us that she is the paradigm of prayer. She's the one who poured out her heart to God. She's the one who opened herself up. She's the one who challenged God. And in a very real way, part of what moves God in the time of Rabbi Akiva, and I think what moves God in the time of Hannah, and what moves God today, is what I bring to the experience. Can I be a representative of Hannah? What can I do to make this experience real and powerful and meaningful, but also to evoke within God a response?
Yeah, well, and I think one of the challenges that the High Holiday presents is, on the one hand, it's meant to be a time of sort of Hakel, when we bring everyone together, right? Where so many people in the Jewish community are together. And part of the High Holidays is just seeing those people and spending time with those people, the people who you see every year, who are who's, where you maybe sit close to them. But then the other part is, how do you channel that part of Chana, which is that she is the paradigm of how we pray. If it's praying with our mouths open and evoking our prayers, but not actually saying them loudly, that our prayer is so thoughtful that we're not only going to think them through, but we're going to mouth them, but not loudly enough so that other people can hear it, that it remains our personal prayer. Or what does it mean to shuckle, to move back and forth in prayer, and to be so into your prayer that it doesn't even matter if other people are watching you while you are moving back and forth. And so how do we balance that seeing of people and spending time with people on the one hand, and on the other hand making sure that this is that individual prayer experience that one can have with God?
But from another perspective, the blending of those experiences, I think, is the point. The Baal Shem Tov teaches that there are two different paths to spiritual engagement. One in which I seclude myself and I go into my private prayers and I close out the world around me, and that's the easy way. And the hard path is to engage in all of the same spiritual practices, the prayer, the cheshbon nefesh, the soul searching that we go through this time of year, while maintaining my engagement. And I think about how much emphasis we put on making sure that we've straightened out our relationships with other people. Have I asked forgiveness for the things that I need to ask forgiveness for? Have I granted forgiveness for the things that have injured me this year? And when I look around the room on Rosh Hashanah and I see so many people, I think this is the opportunity. Right now, all of a sudden, I'm seeing people maybe that I haven't seen in a while. This is the opportunity to check in and to make sure that as we're transitioning into a new year, that I've tied up all the loose ends from last year and that I've made amends for the things that I need to make amends for, and that I've let go of the things that are old that I don't need to carry with me into this year. And so I think about it a little bit differently. The challenge is not how do I make time for myself and my personal prayer in the midst of this, but how do I bring the two together? How do I find a moment of personal spiritual engagement within the social interactions?
But don't you think there's a sense of urgency based really on seeing everyone? Because we're not just seeing the people that are there, we're also conscious of who's not there.
Oh, yeah.
There's seats that you saw filled a year ago at this time, and they're not filled. And there's this reminder, liturgically and Utana Tokef, most viscerally, that there's death and there's life, and that there's a sense of urgency about all of this, that I need to take this seriously. I need to be present. And as you were saying, Abe, it's an opportunity for us to make amends, is to engage people that we may not have engaged with as well as we might have.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's really to kind of feel the power and the joy of a family homecoming, of bringing the congregation together, and just seeing the building filled with young people and people of all ages and children, and hearing the shofar together. That moment of hearing the shofar, my gosh, it's just, we all become one, almost childlike, just hearing the sound and hearing and feeling ourselves lifted up, hearing the Chazan's voice as a whole and being lifted up. Yeah. And I think that that's such a beautiful and traditional idea that we sort of experience, firsthand. It's what a gift.
And I think that part of Selichot is doing that preparation, just like you said, and it's preparing us for the prayer part and the seeing people for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And in the same way, we are meant to prepare our families, right, for when our families come together. So I was just at Chicago Jewish Day School, and I asked the students there, what do they think about when they think of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? And most of the responses were food-related, right? If it's, apples and honey, or if it's pomegranates, or if it's or if also then going to their homes. That a lot of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is not in the synagogue building itself, but it's how that is interacted and how that's created in the home. And so I think what part of Selichot's function is maybe that little alarm clock that says, hey, here comes Rosh Hashanah if you didn't know already. And how do we both celebrate that as that entire community when everyone gathers here, and how do we bring that into each of our homes?
And so in a very real way, we want to bring what happens in this Beit, in this home, in this Beit Knesset, to your home. And so we want to wish everyone a very happy, healthy, sweet new year. And may your prayers and the prayers of the people of Israel and the prayers of all humankind be heard on high, and may we experience the richness of our liturgy and the power of our connection to God, and may all of us be granted a Shana Tova Umituka.
Shana Tova.